Welcome to another edition of Road Scholar. Bob Cordaro, I'm a host at WILK, and I'll be talking to Jimmy Barrett, the president of Road Scholar Trucking today. And we're going to talk about security. We're going to talk about security during their part of the supply chain. And it's an issue that so many of Road Scholar's customers are concerned about. We've got a driver from Road Scholar to amplify and to talk about how he executes the protocols that Road Scholar uses continually, that they use slavishly to make sure that their customers' freight is where it's supposed to be, is secure at all times, and gets where it needs to be, untampered, untainted, and exactly the way the customer needs it to happen. So first of all, welcome you again, Jimmy Barrett.
Hi, Robert.
Great to see you.
Both Roberts.
Yeah, great to see you. And I want you to, I guess, start by saying your overall view and your theories on the security of your customers' cargo.
Let's work it backwards. For most of our major customers that have food products, pharmaceutical products, precious metals, chemicals, we're essentially transporting what we talk about as their market capitalization. If something were to go sideways, go wrong, we're in our care and custody, and it becomes page one material. Wall Street hates bad news. Like as illustrated, when Tiger Woods took the 9-iron to the face, the aggregate market cap drop in its five major sponsors went down by 12% or billions of dollars and did not recover for a couple of weeks. But it initially took one big drop. So
you're thinking about it in the larger scale for your customers. I was just thinking about it, well, how do we keep this freight secure? So that's very important for people to know that Road Scholar has a larger vision of this issue.
Again, we're not hauling just the products. We're hauling their market cap, their values, their brand names. So no small part of what we must do, right, is to assure, as you said earlier, the product gets to delivered as it was loaded, untampered, untouched.
Now, talk about the protocols that Road Scholar, and we can only generalize today, but talk about the protocols that Road Scholar undertakes underneath that theory that you just outlined, the specific steps you undertake. And we'll go to Robert, one of your great drivers here today, to amplify that.
Oh, yeah. I will touch on some points, but obviously I'm not going to give away the secret sauce. Mm-hmm. I'm not going to highlight some of the protocols we have in place that we don't want people to know about.
That's right.
Okay. So we start with making trailers are clean, they're spotless, they're sanitized. You know, the food business, the pharma business. Then we talk about the quality of the equipment. Have it so it doesn't break down on the road. You know, freight at risk is freight at risk. So if truck is broke down on the side of the road, you know, the driver and the product are targets. Okay, so one of the protocols we have when we're moving our pharma products is we won't let that truck stop in the first 200 miles of dispatch, right? Unless there's an emergency, and if so, notify. But that truck and trailer are both being tracked constantly, right? Much like ATC, air traffic control. Mm-hmm. We have these guys on the radar, if you will, and gals.
Mm-hmm. You and I talked informally at one time about the seals and the opening of the doors and those kinds of things that a lot of people wouldn't think about. They think, well, we close the door and we lock it and that's fine.
Bobby, there are three types of seals. There's the indicative seal, which is either aluminum or plastic. In today's market, when you have 4D printing, you can break that seal and reproduce it in a heartbeat. So it's an indicative seal, but it's sometimes not tamper evident. Then you have a barrier seal, a lock. All of our trailers, all of pharma and food trailers, They all have a very, very special, very, very difficult lock to penetrate. Right? There's a rule in cargo theft. It's a 90-second rule. If a thief cannot get at the cargo within the first 90 seconds, he's on to an easier target. So the third type is an electronic seal. So we have indicative seals, barrier seals, and electronic seals. So if there's a failure with either the indicative seal or the lock, I can go in and to the satellite and validate whether or not that trailer door has been opened and closed, and if so, when and where.
It's important to know. And now, you have one of your great drivers with you today. And Robert, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hello, my name is Robert Pancaro. I'm one of the professional drivers at Road Scholar.
Now, Jimmy Barrett just outlined what Road Scholar's protocols are. You're the guy that, as Jimmy had told us off the camera, who executes those protocols.
We're the guys that follow the protocol, you know, and it's something you do every day. Sometimes you don't even think about it. That's how often you do it. So I put a padlock on my truck, whether the truck is empty or full. That's protocol. Jimmy wants a padlock on the truck. Padlock's always on my truck. I don't move that truck without the padlock on it, whether it's empty or full. Even if it has a seal on it, I still padlock it.
Now, one of the things we talked about in one of our previous episodes with one of the great drivers was that you have your own equipment. You know, that tractor's yours.
Right.
How does that play into the security issue from your standpoint?
Well, I'm not trying to be biased or anything, but I've worked for other companies in my career, and this equipment is the best equipment I've ever driven.
That's nice.
You know, even if there's a problem with it, I mean, if you need a seat, I'll tell the shop I need a seat the next morning. I got a new seat in my truck. You know, this just are on top of it. You know, and like I said, it's the best equipment I've ever driven.
So we've talked in the past with Jimmy and with drivers about the culture of Road Scholar, and what you're telling me, Robert, is that the culture of Road Scholar is security and top shelf equipment.
Exactly. You know, you can't do you can't do a good job with inferior product. You just can't. You know, and this helps a driver being a tractor every day that runs right and you know and is comfortable to drive it. I mean, you're in that thing 10, 12 hours a day. You know, so you want something that's going to be halfway decent, and they're miles ahead of that with this equipment.
Now, when you drive every day, security is obviously one of your top priorities.
Right. Mm-hmm.
How do you view that? Just yourself, you're taking a load, be it pharmaceuticals, any valuable cargo, any secure cargo that needs additional attention that might be subject to whether it be hijack or tampering.
Well, I mainly drive reefers, you know, with the reefers, refrigerator truck. And, you know, you got to make sure the temperature's the right temperature and make sure the green light is on. I mean, all that stuff is monitored, but you know, they have special locks on the back with the key to get into those things. But still, I still use the padlock on top of that.
But Bobby, what Robert said was it's being monitored. Any type of pharma or temp product constantly has eyes on target. We're constantly monitoring that through satellites.
Mm-hmm. And how do you
temp control?
And how do your customers understand? I guess two things. They've got their products on the line, they've got their reputation on the line, and they've got their market cap on the line, as you had pointed out earlier. And Road Scholar takes all three of those things very seriously.
I gave a presentation down in Florida to a major customer of ours, and they were talking about security and breach on product, right? And I posed a question to the executive team. What would happen if there's a product intervention of your product and it got contaminated intentionally or unintentionally, and it got into the street? That's a multi-billion-dollar company. And they said if they made page one, they figured they'd lose 50% of their business the next day. and have a very, very difficult time recovering from it. So they took our protocols and they applied those to their family of truckers, right? And everybody had 6 months to get up to speed. And it's
with Road Scholar protocols.
Yes. And they're constantly evolving. They're constantly getting better, right? You don't sit on this, think, oh, you got the best of the best. I got sued by a company. I worked with a manufacturer down in New Jersey to create a lock that's controlled by our dispatch team and or the shipper. And it was an internal lock, right? That the driver would not have access to, nor a thief. We went to market with it and we did some beta testing. I took it to one of our farmer customers. There's 50 people out in the lot just oohing about it. But 6 months later, I got a cease and desist
from
somebody in Chicago.
So Road Scholar is looking at it, and we'll talk to Robert from his perspective. Road Scholar is looking at it constantly because the threats and the dangers are evolving.
But also,
so are you.
But it's not just my customers' brand recognition. If I'm the trucker who's carrying it, I'm on page one with them.
Yeah,
that's not a good sight. Remember that accident that I had down in New Jersey with the Walmart truck?
Mm-hmm.
It was all over British papers. That's bad press. Right? So selfishly as well, we're going to protect our customers. We're going to do the job they want done, when and where they want it. But we're also going to protect our own identities, our reputations.
And Robert,
and safety, that's a big issue too. When you're driving down the road, these protocols are put in place, so we can get the job done and get home, So I take safety very, very seriously on the road.
And I think you could probably speak for your fellow drivers at Road Scholar that it's ingrained.
Right. Yeah.
And
we're all professionals.
Robert, something you said earlier, and I would equate it to the sports arena, football, whatever. If the fundamentals of safety and security are pounded into you, they just become second nature as a driver.
Yeah. That's what it is that's what it is for every driver that's at Road Scholar. You have to. If you don't do that, then you shouldn't be behind the wheel. That's my opinion.
That's good stuff. Now, so Jimmy, if you are talking to your customers as we do this podcast,
certainly,
sort of tell them directly, and it may be just a restatement of how we opened. Why is it so important to you that their freight is untainted, untouched, and is completely secure from end to end as long as Road Scholar is handling it?
It separates us from an awful lot of truckers. People do not want to go to that distance or that effort or that expense by which to have the safety, the compliance, the oversight, the temp monitoring. It separates us. There's a book out called Blue Ocean Strategy. And then they talk about most people swim in red water, red oceans. All the blood's churned up from everybody biting each other's throat. Find the blue water. Have your own market environment. And having read that years ago, is how we're trying to push the protocols and separate us from the guy in front of me or behind me in the truck.
So that's an important point. And you brought it up in another way in one of our previous podcasts, that Road Scholar does not seek to be a commodity.
Not at all.
You seek to be a premium product that people who believe and need premium service go to.
That's a fact. We can't work in the commodity world, right? I don't have 1,000 trucks. We have 120. So I can't buy tires as well as the other guy with 1,000 trucks or 2,000 or 10,000. So we have to create something that's a game changer, differentiator, right? And the way we handle and monitor and manage cargo is a game changer. I talked to another driver from another company, and I said, I could tell you where a person's freight is within 10 meters. He's laughed at me. He says, I can't tell you what state where your freight would be in. So
that's a big deal.
And it costs money.
Yeah.
Tracking and tracing these. If you're tracking and tracing your equipment, tractors and trailers, boats, somebody's got to be looking at it in the office in dispatch.
No matter what you're carrying, you treat it all the same. I mean, it's going to get there where it has to go. It's going to get from point A to point B without a problem.
And you're going to make sure
unless
that
there's something mechanical in between. But as far as the protocols that we follow, there shouldn't be a problem with delivery ever.
Great. Thank you, Robert. Jimmy, any last thoughts?
Well, as I said, freight at rest is freight at risk, right? So my job is to keep some velocity under the freight and do it properly, right? Parallel, right? The president's going down the interstate. They're clearing the roads and they're going 60 miles an hour because if that car stops, he's an easier target. Same thing with freight, same thing with cargo. But the final message is that we understand the mission that we have your products, the inconveniences that would occur if indeed there were an event, right? More so, the problem of compromising, if your product were compromised, and you can take a very big financial hit. Finally, the FDA regulates to all the pharmaceutical manufacturers and distributors. They have to, by law, quote, guard against in-transit losses, end quote. By the time the product gets in the truck, there are billions of dollars in R&D, legal, compounding it, packaging it, labor, billions. If they had a pattern, if they had a trucker that had a pattern of failure, they could lose their licensing and or distribution responsibilities. So plenty of money's on the line. Right?
And reputations of everyone involved. I think it's important that Road Scholar, its drivers, take that deadly seriously.
We do. Well, one of our pharma companies came in to vet us out. They all do. I said, what would happen if we had a failure? What would happen if our drivers got pulled over by some bad guys intending to steal the product? He says, very simple. Your driver will have a cut throat. So I went out, I got a full color picture of a 4-part color picture of someone with a cut throat, and I show it to our drivers who are on those missions. Don't do something stupid. Save yourself.
And that ain't going to happen to you, right, Robert?
I was just going to curse. But never happened to me.
All right. Well, we've been talking about security. We've been talking about controlling the supply chain that Road Scholar does for you, the customer. And I think you can agree. They're serious about it. They pay attention to it. They know it. And they'll deliver for you. This is Bob Cordaro. We'll be back next time with another edition of Road Scholar Trucking.
Thanks, Robert.